wasting hours just studying vocab lists. It gives them satisfaction, but it's just not practical. I've seen that everyone wants a shortcut. If you do this one thing, you're going to get fluent. It doesn't really work like that.
What do I need to avoid so that I can make sure I'm hitting fluency, right? So start there. What would you avoid in today's modern world in order to make sure you're on the right path?
That's an excellent question. You're really making me think. I would say the first thing that instantly comes to my mind is wasting hours just studying vocab lists. And I know my Korean friends, that's going to hit them hard because they really study for their like SATs is called the sunung, which is their make or break, which uni you get into in Korea that dictates the rest of your life. They love spending so much time reading and learning vocab. It gives them satisfaction, but it's just not practical. I'm fully of the opinion that it's much better to speak a language, and if you don't know vocab, just describe something. Like, ah non, je sais pas comment dire ça. C'est le truc qui tu utilises quand tu écris.
Exactly.
And then, yeah, pen, stylo, you know, and then that's more practical than stylo.
Stylo.
I don't know anything else I can say, you know, so I would say wasting time. And this is something that you actually really made me think about when we spoke, was that you said if you've got a finite amount of time, let's say you're only studying for 1 hour a day, that's not that much time. Really hone in on what's going to be useful for your goal. And when you said that, that made me really be self-critical that like you may enjoy I don't know, let's say, for example, TV drama. The one that everyone talks about, the buzzword, everyone, oh, I love studying English watching Friends. Friends can be excellent if your goal is to communicate like those types of people in America, casual conversation. If you want to use business English, Friends is not very useful because it's too casual. So hone in on your goal, what do you want to do, and make sure that the time you use matches your goal. And when you do that, you'll be a lot more motivated and you'll feel the satisfaction of, I want to speak business English for business, for my work. Suddenly, I'm learning these phrases. Could you please send this back to me by this deadline? Oh, deadline, that's a great word. Deadline's not a good word if you're in the pub with a couple of friends or whatever. So it's really pinpointing and identifying your goal and the target style of language. That could be no matter what language that's in. Those, I think, were the two main things.
So you started us off by making sure that we avoid the study of vocabulary lists, stuff that is just going to be isolated terms, which 100% can't agree more. And then you've linked that from saying, I don't want to do that, but I want to do this, which is honing in on our stuff. So I'm going to keep us still with inverted thinking just for a little bit and what we want to avoid. Where do we find you? What do you avoid in the modern world with, let's say, Duolingo apps? I mean, you're very well aware of what I, do, and I know other polyglots and people in language learning have different view, but clearly not all apps are made the same. Clearly not all digital learning you can stuff is truly beneficial. What do you avoid in that realm? And you can include AI in this if you want to touch on your thoughts on that. What do you avoid?
See, I think there's a misconception here that like any like TikTok reels or shorts are bad and that any AI is bad. But for me, I always see those as like the cherry on the cake, which can be good. If you're studying and making gains, and then at the end of the day, you've got 30 minutes where you scroll. If you're watching 30 minutes of a monkey dancing, compared to 30 minutes of like, oh, interesting phrases in Japanese, and you learn this nuance that at the dinner table they say "kochusosuma at the end of the meal, that on its own is like pen. It's not going to help you learn the whole language, but it's still better than 30 minutes of monkey dancing. Yeah, and you can understand those cultural nuances through shorts. And through AI, a bit of chatting. Sometimes I'm bored, I just open up GPT and then say like, ça va? Oui, je vais bien. Comment allez-vous? Have those little chats. It's fun.
Yeah.
But that on its own is not going to be the thing. So avoid relying on them solely, is what I would say. Incorporate them, but you can't rely only on that. In the same way you can't, I think this is the hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, is that it's the same with the gym. I've seen that everyone wants a shortcut. If you do this one thing, you're going to get fluent. It doesn't really work like that. If you only speak and you never study grammar, or vice versa, like you have to basically the thing that no one ever wants to hear is that it's difficult and you've got to put in place a bunch of different things at the same time and build them up over time rather than quick gains. Like maybe some people can do that, like military people. We've had a few people on the channel before who were in the military and they had to quickly condense a lot of language in 6 months, get fluent in Arabic before they
deploy.
Yeah, but then overall, unless you can really dedicate your whole life for 6 months, I would say focus on the marathon rather than the sprint.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that people don't quite understand. You know, I did a video on CIA attackers. I've had several CIA and intelligence officers on some of our other podcasts, The Way of Will John, and even on the language channel. And what people don't quite understand is when those people, like you're talking about 6 months before I got to go to, they spend, and many diplomats do this as well. Like when they go to the language school, it's all day. They're being paid to do this. That's their job for 3 months, 2.5 months, whatever. Now, when we're talking about people who learn really quickly over 6 months, that's kind of how they're doing it. If you're like, oh, how did he do it in 6 months? Well, what you call 6 months is you call an hour of a day. What they call over 6 months
8 hours.
is like 8 to 10 hours of
intense.
6 days most of the time. Sometimes, it's 7. Sometimes it's 5. It's very intense. All right. So, but with that in mind, knowing that not everybody's going to have 8, 10 hours, I'm going to put that question back to you that you kind of talked about. I have an hour of my day. I'm a busy person. I work a 9 to 5. I've got an hour at least that I can commit 5 to 6 days a week. Maybe on the weekends I can commit a little bit more. What do I do in that hour to learn a language best?
I'm going to answer that question by going diverting a little bit by saying how I got to a fluency in French and Spanish, which nowadays that I don't even use. There's so many holes in my grammar now because I don't use them all the time. I studied French and Spanish from the age of about 11. If you know the British education system, I did GCSE and A-level in French and Spanish. And then at university, my first degree was politics and French, double major. I always say double joint honors in the UK. And I did classes in degree level Spanish while I was studying French as well. So in total, that's around 10 years of my life where I would sometimes have days, 2 hours French, 2 hours Spanish. And still at this day now, because I don't use the languages all the time, I forget what le or la is. I can't remember this word or that word because I'm not really using these languages anymore. That's frustrating. So because I did it for 10 years, often multiple hours per day during the week, to then try and condense all of that into an hour is really difficult. But you can, I think, make a lot of progress by, again, first, it depends on the goal. What's let's establish a goal of 1 hour. What's the goal of that person?
That person is trying to get to the point, which I think I'm going to go with the majority of people that I think are watching this. They have never been able to fully feel like they speak the language. They've done Duolingo, they've done this, they've done that, they've failed. Because when they finally go to France, to Spain, they realize, I don't actually speak. I understand a little bit, but I don't actually speak. I just want them to get to this level where you can communicate. You might be a little rusty here and there, but that comes back incredibly fast.
True.
Right? So can you get us to that point?
So what I would say then is, for me, French is my best language. And if I wanted to get there as quick as possible from ground zero, I would suggest you have to be with a native speaker if you want to do it as quick as possible. If you can identify someone in your area, online can be incredibly useful, but if we're speaking in an ideal world, I can be physically with someone who speaks that language. And we can dedicate some time, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, to going over some grammar and the boring, less fun part, the chemical, the logical, mathematical side of the language, understanding tenses, understanding verbs and conjugations. That was the first thing I learned actually in French and Spanish. I found it very useful. So having some time every day where you are refining your understanding of that grammatical side of the language, but then also having at least 30 minutes of very, very natural conversation where you're pushing yourself to every time, the conversation should feel like at least half of that conversation time should feel quite challenging and difficult. You should intentionally try and have conversations that feel more difficult each time.